Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bedluck Gamer, and hey, it's another video. It's been a while since I just posted a video the other day, and the funny thing about that video is I literally recorded it a day after my announcement I'm going to be back. Babies, right? It's never an exact science on how easy or how manageable it is to take care of a newborn. So, fingers crossed that this video comes out in a somewhat relevant time, or at least close enough. Anyway, that's unimportant for those of you who are probably watching this video for the first time. What you're all here for is to know whether the Cosmere RPG, an RPG based on award-winning novelist Brandon Sanderson's work, especially the Stormlight Archive, which is going to be the first of the Cosmere books to come out, is going to be worth your time. And this video is not about that. It's about why you should play the Cosmere RPG. Now, that statement comes with a couple caveats. First of all, the Cosmere RPG is a narrative game. Now, it's a narrative game in the sense that it has as much narrative implements as it does game implements. In fact, their core book that's going to be releasing sometime this summer is going to be nearly 400 pages of mostly game rules. They have a whole separate book for the setting and how you can interact with it and everything like that. And if you're comparing this game to things like Pathfinder or D&D, especially since that's in the title of this video, you'll know that this game has particularly a good amount of starting classes or paths. Now, you don't need to know a lot about the books to make use of these paths. They are well written out in their sections, and more importantly, half the paths are literally just people who do different types of things. So, if you're playing an agent, you're playing someone who is like a rogue. You know a lot of different techniques. There's the thievery path, or there's the spy path and stuff like that, where it's very obvious of what your character is meant to do. And anyone can be like that. And with the new multi-pathing system, you can blend your characters to have the exact skills and abilities you really want for them to have. It's a very ingenious system. And so, that being the case, this game is for people who enjoy telling a story along with playing a game in equal measure. And equal measure doesn't mean a deficiency in either category. A game can be very simple with very simple rules and be balanced. Cosmere is not going to be like that. Cosmere is going to be a pretty chunky game for both gaming mechanics and narrative-based mechanics. If that's interesting to you, then we have a great video for you ahead. In addition, if you're a D&D player and you're looking for something that's a little bit better grounded, you're looking for something that is fantasy, but not necessarily high fantasy, if you want something with a world setting that's so thoroughly written out where you don't have to look through a diaspora of different types of novels and books and all the editing and different things that go into the Forgotten Realms that really make it a very messy setting, this game is also going to be for you, especially if you're looking for a more advanced tabletop experience. The Cosmere RPG is a great game for narrative gamers who like a more advanced system. It's not very casual, even though you could play casual. The elements in this game are going to be somewhat more advanced. You're going to be asked to take more honest on the way you interpret your character, the kinds of actions you take, and more importantly than that, the way you build your character. Characters are going to be built for specific roles, and due to the game's reward system, where your character's narrative goals are met and you're rewarded with different game mechanics, is going to really emphasize people who are really good at telling a story. So, if you like telling stories, if you don't mind a more advanced experience, then the Cosmere RPG is probably going to be for you. But let's talk about the specifics of that. Now that we got the caveats out of the way, now that you know what you're generally getting into and you haven't clicked off this video, what is so good about the Cosmere RPG? First, let me give you my experience with it. So, I've been reading the Stormlight Archives, which has really gotten me invested in the world, and so I might have some bias based on that. But I have been playing the game on the weekends with the beta rules that are currently out. And from everything I've been seeing, those aren't going to change too much from when the book fully releases this summer, at least in PDF form. So I can say pretty confidently I know the general bones of the system. And while I haven't played it to an extensive amount to see if we can break the game or anything like that, I can tell you for sure this game is very hot in the running for my new favorite TTRPG, which, mind you, was held by Pathfinder 2nd Edition up until this point, and it's still a pretty like neck and neck race. There's some things that Pathfinder does really well, but there's things that Cosmere does that I think fits me particularly a little bit better. So, along with the general like world setting, which I admitted I already have gotten into, the Cosmere RPG is a narrative game with narrative and gaming in pretty equal amounts. There's not an excessive amount of rules for necessarily what your characters can and can't do, certain stat requirements that you can and can't do. But conversely, your characters can't do things without some narrative reason or without some like framework. There are a lot of things. We have lifting capacities. We have injury tables. Like, this game is not shy on adding some chunky rules. But the thing I really like about it is how it blends the narrative into the rules, where it's not just a, yeah, we gave this an open description on our spell or whatever, so you could use it in ingenuitive ways. That requires the player to think of that, and that requires the GM to arbitrate that. I don't like when the GM has to do a lot of extra work so that your game can have narrative weight, right? Every game can be as narrative as the GM wants it to be, but a game system is one that supports the GM, not gives them more work. And the Cosmere RPG does that really well. One really great example I really like for this is their expertises. So expertise is something where you have a specific knowledge on a category of thing, and they can be somewhat general or they can be more specific. One of the examples they give in the book is if your character has religion expertise, you know roughly the basics of all religions on Roshar, the planet they exist on. But for more obscure religions, you're still going to need to make an actual roll if you want to get more information out of them. Though you could take a expertise on one of those more specific religions where, yeah, you can't just name off things or general information on the other bigger religions, but you know that religion better, and thus you can speak more on it and you can know more basic things. One of the core elements of the expertise, though, is it eliminates unnecessary roles for something your character should be good at. No longer do we have a system where a wizard and a barbarian both make arcana rolls? The barbarian rolls with a -1, the wizard rolls with a +8, and by luck of the dice, the barbarian just seems to know more about whatever's happening than the wizard does. I hate when that happens in games. I hate D20 systems, which, by the way, this is a D20 system, and I have gripes about that. This is not a perfect game by any means. But I hate when D20 systems give no real weights to character backstories or what their characters should be good at versus what the skill points really say. And skill points, in all honesty, they only give them a certain percentage chance, oftentimes less than 50% better likelihood of succeeding a check than someone who is just not particularly skilled in that thing. That's irritating, but in the Cosmere RPG, and this is a rule that'll be for all the books, not just Stormlight, if you're playing a Magicaster who has Arcana expertise, sure, the Barbarian might be able to roll a deduction skill to try to figure that information out, but the Wizard just knows the basics. And expertise also allows players to roll on checks they normally wouldn't be able to. there will be some things like maybe some kind of magic tech that unless you have that expertise, you're just not going to know how it works. There's no way you can just figure it out because it's too advanced. But someone with that expertise can make that role, making it where player choices actually matter. Narrative actually matters. You're playing an engineer character. Your character just will have better knowledge on those things than other characters. This is huge. This is something I absolutely love about the Cosmere RPG because, one, it eliminates unnecessary roles when applicable, and two, it makes it where your character choices legitimately matter to the narrative and to how you mechanically play. Your character can just be good enough at a thing where you don't even need to roll the dice. And this is one of those few situations where not rolling dice is actually a mechanic. That's how you know this is a very strong blend between narrative elements and gamer elements, because rolling dice is only just a means to an end, and it doesn't need to exist when your character has the proper stats, which I think is really good. In addition to this, they've introduced a new die that you roll pretty frequently. They say you want to roll the plot die every 30%. So every 1 in 3 rolls, roughly speaking, you want to roll a plot die to see what it affects in the story. Now, the plot die comes with a D20 roll. And what the plot die does is when you roll the D20, you roll a D6, and depending on what face of the D6, they have a unique die that they're selling with the game. But if you just have a normal D6, there's a table, which I'll show here. If you roll a 1 or a 2, you get a bonus to that check, but it comes at the cost of a complication. Some negative aspect happens in the story, but that negative aspect does not remove your success, nor does it invalidate your success. So this keeps the story moving forward, but it creates new problems that the players have to deal with. It's pretty dynamic, and the fact that your complications actually give you a +2 or +4 bonus on your check is absolutely insane. If you play any D20 game, you know every +1 matters. So a +2 and a +4 matter a lot. And on the other side of the die, we have just opportunities, where even if you fail the check, you get some positive aspect, something that makes up the difference or something that gives the players a new opportunity to roll on. And these opportunities can have a wide range. Now, true, this does require some arbitration from the GM, both the complications and the opportunities. And the game does encourage players to offer their own ideas, but the GM gets the final say. This is an advanced game, as I mentioned before. Your GM is going to need to arbitrate some things in a game. And there's not a TTRPG out there that exists where that's just not going to be the case. Even if you had a book that had a rule for literally every single interaction, no human is capable of remembering every single one of those interactions, or at the very least, not accurately. So there's going to be a lot of effort on the GM either way. But in the Cosmere RPG, it's very simple, and opportunities are baked into a lot of abilities and even complications. For instance, if a character is using an improvised weapon or even improvised armor, when they roll a complication, the GM can just be like, that item broke. It's a very easy, simple rule, and it accurately represents the reality of the situation. You're using an item not meant for combat, and thus it's more likely to break off pretty quickly in the combat, and that doesn't require any arbitration on the GM side. And there's many abilities that say you can use an opportunity to do more damage or more of this or more of that, or to have an ally come into the situation. Like, there's so many ways that the plot die changes the story dynamically, but it also is mechanically very in-depth. Complications increase the values of your skill checks, attack rolls, or whatever. And conversely, opportunities, while they don't have a very strong mechanical weight, they do in some abilities, sure, but they're a lot more loose. They're a lot more open-end, but they allow the players to think and take advantage of the situation, giving players who have a higher amount of narrative skill an edge, essentially, in combat. And actually, speaking on edges in combat, this game does something that I think is really awesome as well, though it's not a perfect system and there's going to be some complications. There's an action any character can take called Gain an Advantage. You use one of your skills against an enemy. This is a singular action, and by the way, the Cosmere is a 3-action system, if you're familiar with Pathfinder. And technically D&D also has a 3-action system, just a lot more limited, though I believe they've opened it up somewhat in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, so Gain an Advantage, 1 action, you use one of your skills against one of the enemy's defenses. And by the way, enemies and characters both have 3 defenses: a physical defense that represents their overall physicality, whether that's endurance, agility, or what have you. They have their cognitive defense, which is just their ability to deduce and their ability to resist mental effects. And they have their spiritual defenses, which affects their overall like emotions and, well, their very soul. So your character picks one of their skills. They could use like a deception to try to feint an enemy using thievery. They sleight of hand, and the weapon is no longer in the hand that they think it is, but it's actually in their other hand, making the enemy off guard or giving the player advantage on their next check against that enemy. This is something the players are going to be doing a lot, and this allows players to be very inventive and very dynamic with their combat. Gain an Advantage is one of the better ways to ensure or at least help hit enemies more frequently. And because of this, players are going to be very engaged with their narrative. It's going to make them want to add narrative elements to the combat so that they can make more interesting, more dynamic combats. Now, this does have a problem. Players are going to ask, hey, GM, can I use my best stat? Hey, GM, can I use my best stat? Hey, GM, can I use my best stat? They're going to come up with every reason to game the system. But the great thing is that the Cosmere wants this. The Cosmere RPG wants your player to be as powerful as possible. The GM can always throw more challenges. With the addition of the complication die, even more enemies can be actively added to a combat. Reinforcements, another patrol comes by, all this kind of stuff. So no matter how big of an advantage the players can get, the GM always has ultimate say, and the GM has mechanical reasons to balance combats rather than just, I felt like it, which feels really good. So already, if you can't tell, I'm very excited about this game, but you can see the blend of narrative and game mechanics. This is the game I've been wanting for a long time. A game setting in a world that I think is fascinating, that's super interesting, but more importantly, well-grounded. I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of high fantasy settings that just don't feel like they work as a setting. They have too much plot holes, too much incongruities that make it where it's very difficult to envision a world working in a very specific way. And a setting that's a lot more grounded, that's a lot more even, suits me very well. Now, that's not to say that you enjoying those high fantasy, super chaotic kind of settings is bad. In fact, D&D thrives on this with the sheer number of ancestries and different cultures and just different little guys that you can play in your games. That's completely okay. And if that's what you like in a game, Cosmere is not going to be for you. Cosmere is very human-centric for the most parts, though even in the Stormlight, humans are not necessarily even physically exactly the same. There's some unique differences between them, but it's a little bit blander on tone in that way. But instead, each peoples will have a very in-depth culture, a very well written out world, and their interactions and how the world is set up is very well done. Brandon Sanderson is a award-winning novelist, for instance. And I can tell you, not even Pathfinder 2E has that kind of pedigree on their lore team. Like, they make great things. They make some interesting things, for sure, for sure. They're no Brandon Sanderson. Plain and simple. Doesn't make the games bad. I'm just saying that that's what makes the Cosmere good. So we have an amazing setting. We have rules that blend perfectly into a way that are both chunky but narratively fulfilling, that make players want to achieve things in game. I don't even think I already talked too much about the reward system. They have a reward system where your character can set a goal for themselves, and when you accomplish that goal, you get a reward that's built into the system, and that reward can be almost anything. Characters have a limited number of expertises, mostly limited by their intellect score, but they can also add more expertises through either talents or by getting rewards for narrative goals. A character can set out a goal saying, I want to learn about these people. I want to learn about their culture. And by the time the GM dictates that they have achieved that goal, which there is a step-by-step process on how to do, then they will get that culture's expertise, giving them the ability to understand and roughly speak the language, know the general facts about that language, and can make unique roles that people who don't know about that culture can't even make. That's amazing. The fact that the game just gives you a stat, and it's not just stats at all. You can get unique companions. You can get unique companions that you can't normally get through your character's leveling up process. You can get like a Rashadium, a war horse that is like a Clydesdale. It's a massive horse, more intelligent than a normal horse and way more sturdy, way more durable, a really powerful companion on the battlefield. You can't get this by leveling up. You can only get this as a reward, which I think is absolutely amazing. And there's so many ways that this game really makes you want to invest in the story, invest in your character, have ambitions, have goals, tell an interesting narrative, and it rewards you mechanically every single time. If I've not won you over by this spiel alone, the Cosmere is not going to be for you. Let's be honest here. If none of these elements sound interesting to you enough to check it out for yourself, the game is just not going to be for you. And that's completely okay. We all have a particular flavor of pizza we like, after all. And this one is just mine. You know, this one is very much a game with a lot of crunch. And by the way, let's talk about crunch. All right. Mechanically, this game has such an impactful talent system. Every path you can take has a list of, or like tree of talents that you can select, and each of those talents mechanically make your character better. One of the big ones in both the hunter path and the warrior path is combat training. And it's absolutely insane because not only do you get a weapon expertise and armor expertise, pretty much everything you need to do to be great at combat, which, by the way, makes them really good first choices if you want to have your character have more narrative elements with the other expertises that you normally would be able to select. But in addition to this, it makes it where every attack you make, you can, if you miss, graze as a free action. Now, the graze action is really cool. It is a free action you can take when you miss an enemy with a strike, and you spend a focus, which is a limited resource pool, kind of akin to stamina, and you do your weapon damage. You don't add your attribute to it, but you do your weapon base damage, which is really cool. It makes missing not necessarily a bad thing in this game. It fixes one of the biggest problems in tabletop, which is I attack, I miss, I end my turn. That's something that just doesn't happen in this game because of the graze system. If you miss, you can at least do some damage as long as you have the focus. But with combat training, which every character who is going to be a combat character is going to want to take, is just going to get that for free. No focus. They just once per round, when they make an attack action and they miss, they graze the enemy, dealing damage, meaning their character is good at combat. They are whittling the enemy down. They're always making progress. Every combat round feels like you're moving towards the end. There's no moments that are just like, oh, I guess I didn't do anything. The graze system is absolutely amazing. And there's many more talents that let your character do really great things. My favorite being the agent having opportunist, which allows you to re-roll a plot die once per round just for free. But in addition to this, they have ways of forcing a plot die where you spend a focus and you can just roll a plot die, or you do a 2 action ability and it rolls a plot die automatically, giving you the chance at an opportunity or a complication. You can make narrative elements. You can make the fight dynamically change as a mechanic. You're playing an agent, you're adjusting how often things just happen in combat, which I think is really cool. And it's honestly a playstyle it's going to be hard for me to divert away from, because I really like that. I like the ability of creating new opportunities for myself, manipulating the battlefield in some way, even calling in allies, even if it's complications. I like when things don't go the way as planned and you have more challenges. I want a game that engages me mentally, and mechanically, this game does it. 384 pages, I believe, of pure gaming narrative-based mechanics is absolutely amazing. I really think the Cosmere is going to be for a lot of people. And I know this video is titled, especially if you play D&D. And the biggest reason I made that claim in the title is this game feels exactly like D&D. It has advantage and disadvantage. You roll a d20, you add your skill modifier and your stat modifier. It has DCs that are kind of the basics, you know. It's 10, 15, 20, 25, which not exactly D&D, I know for sure, but still. And to be fair, this is something I've been homebrewing and adjusting in my games as well. But this game feels like D&D. It's just more grounded. There's not a lot of jank. There's not a lot of things where your GM either wants it to happen or doesn't want it to happen. You're not going to be necessarily wildly more powerful than your players just because you happen to take the right spell, right ability. This is a very grounded game that still offers a lot of mechanical depth. Your characters are going to be able to play in very unique and interesting ways. And with the multi-path system, you can make your character exactly the way you want. No more are you waiting for levels. You're a spellcaster and you're just adding more spells, or you have dead levels that don't even really do much of anything for your character. You're going to be able to add something interesting to your character every single level. No bad level ups, no nothing. And this game is designed with milestone in mind. So if you don't like XP, you don't even have to worry about it. I know a lot of D&D people don't like XP. I like XP personally, but you know, a sacrifice I'm going to have to make, I think, for this one. But who knows? The beta rules are still the beta rules, and we won't have the full book until at least June, July, something along those lines. So that's something just to keep in mind. But roughly speaking, this game was designed for D&D players in mind, for people who want to expand their gaming experience, invest in a world that is very well written, very well thought through, and is so flavorful, deep, immersive, everything you've ever wanted. You want a setting to explore to your heart's content? The Cosmere is going to be for you. It's that easy. You want a game that challenges you as a player, as a storyteller, or what have you? This game is going to be for you. D&D, this is the step up if you're looking for a much more in-depth narrative experience. Now, that's not to say you can't have a narrative experience in D&D. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this game offers you a list of mechanics and all kinds of things that reward you for telling stories, rather than relying on your GM to do it for you, rather than relying on your own ability to come up with stuff. If you're a GM, the Cosmere RPG is going to give you a wonderful world to work in with all kinds of great things you can reward your players with. And like for D&D especially, this game feels really good and a really big step up for those who want to take that next step. If you don't, if you like D&D's chaos and silliness and the culture that's been around it, that's completely okay. This video is just to give you the option, just to tell you of what it is. And for other TTRPGs as well, not just D&D. Granted, you know, this game mostly just takes from D&D and a little bit from Pathfinder with its 3-action system. I think it's really good. I think it's something, it's a game I'm going to be covering a lot more in depth for videos to come. And it's one I'm going to heavily invest in. So if you want to join in that journey, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and if you're seeing other Cosmere or TTRPG content out there in general, please interact with those videos as well, not even just mine. This is the year of variety tabletop. We have a great opportunity to introduce this amazing hobby to so many people this world, where there's going to be so many different kinds of games for so many different types of people. And I know tabletop is going to be in for an amazing 2025. So I'm going to be covering a lot of different games during this time, but Cosmere is going to be one of my focuses. And of course, all the great stuff that comes with Pathfinder 2E, Lancer, and Fabula Ultima. So if you're interested in any of that, or you just want a channel that is going to be dedicated to providing you new games to try out and all the kinds of videos you need to get started, this is the channel to subscribe to. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the Cosmere down in the comments below, or at least the Cosmere RPG. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.